Welcome to a beginner's tutorial on Java. I'm going to approach this as if the viewers of this are completely new to coding in general. So if you're looking for an advanced Java instructions, you won't find that in this video. I'd recommend checking something else out. This is assuming that you're coming into coding brand new, have never tried it before. So be prepared to learn the complete and crucial basics. So to begin, what is Java, right? Well, Java is an object-oriented programming language based on lower-level languages like C and C++. Java is a high-level language because it does lots of things behind the scenes, so the developer doesn't have to worry about them. Now, some people would argue you would lose some freedoms of programming by doing that, but for our purposes, we won't have to worry about that, and in some cases, you might not have to ever worry about that in your career as a software developer, so don't worry too much about that. But the question next you'd probably ask would be, why use Java over another language? Well, there's plenty of reasons that you may prefer one language to another, but the reason for Java specifically is that it prided itself on letting developers write their programs once and being able to run it anywhere. Well, nowadays, there's many languages that can do this, and there's plenty of awesome languages to choose from, but Java is still a thriving language. It's running on a lot of systems, so it's still a great language to learn, and we'll use it for our purposes. And a little fun fact as well, it was invented by James Gosling of Sun Microsystems, which was later bought by Oracle, so it's owned by Oracle now. So, now that we know a little bit of what Java is, let's get into how it works. So, how does Java work? Well, when you write a Java program, you'll create a .java file. So you see a few here, hello world.java, factorial.java. These are the ones that are human readable. Okay, so these are the ones that you'll write or someone else will write, and when you're reading someone's code or you're reading your own code, you're reading these files, the .java files. But there's also, when you compile a program, you make a new file, and you'll see that hello world.java will turn to hello world.class, factorial.java to factorial.class, and of course sum of numbers.java to sum of numbers.class. So the .class file is something that the computer is reading, and it's much harder for us to read, but we don't have to worry about reading it because the computer is taking care of it for us. And the awesome part about these is that it runs on the Java virtual machine, so it can run anywhere, Linux, Mac, Windows, it doesn't matter, you can write it once and have it run anywhere, which is very cool. Well, now let's try to get into a little bit of actually writing programs now that we know what Java is and a little bit of the basics of how it works. This is just a very brief overview. There's definitely plenty more to read and plenty more to check out, but this is just a very brief overview of it. So how does it work? Basically, you can think of it in terms of a neighborhood. So the CPU exists to execute instructions. So it will do whatever is requested by the program to perform a task. So usually there's memory involved, which is where data is located. And data is stored in these certain locations that we call memory addresses. And you'll see those on the left here in the memory location, just a synonym for memory address. So you'll see number 2048 and number 2052. And these are kind of like boxes or houses that you can imagine them as. And they store the values. So you'll see there's two values we have right now, 7 and 9. 7's located in 2048 and 9's located in 2052. Each value is assigned the memory location, and that's the address. And then we can change that. So just like in real life, the address may stay the same, but the people who live there will change over time. So we want to get 7 out of there, and we want to replace him with 3. So how do we do that? Well, bam! Let's kick 7 out, and we'll put 3 in. And now 2048 has a value of 3 instead of 7. And 2052 will still remain with 9. So now we have 7 and 9 in 2048 and 2052. But the problem now that we're running into is that we did that all behind the scenes. So this is when we ask the program to execute, it will say, okay, so we'll set 2048 to 3 and 2052 to 9. Bam, and the program exits. Well, that's a problem because the user wants to see those numbers, and we're not showing them those numbers. So how are we going to show the users those numbers? And that's where this beauty print comes into play. So we'll say 2048 set to 3 and 2052 set to 9, as we've done previously, and then we will print the memory addresses, the values at those memory addresses. And you'll see on the screen, yay, we get 3 and 9, so we got exactly what we wanted. And this on the left there, this 2048 and 2052, and the print is pseudocode. And pseudocode is just a big fancy name for basically a rough draft of code. It's not written particularly in any specific language. It's just an idea of how we want the code to run, or how we want to write the code. So pseudocode is definitely awesome, and you'll use it later on, and you'll see it, for our purposes, it worked out just great there. Alright, so unfortunately for programming, it's not always going to be as pretty as the clip art makes it out to be. And in our case, a lot of the things that we do will be run inside the console window. And that looks like this. So we'll say Java numbers, and it will print out 3 and 9, and then it will exit the program. So it'll be finished. It's done everything we've asked it to do. So not as cool as the clip art, but it's more realistic, and to me it's really fun because that's what we can do so far. And it's going to be very cool to see what we can do in the future with that. So now we want to actually put this in terms of Java code and not just pseudocode. So now let's get away from pseudocode. And the first thing to remember is that remembering memory address locations sucks. I mean, can you imagine if I gave you 30 or so odd numbers and I want you to memorize each of their memory addresses? You'd say, you gotta be kidding me, especially if the numbers have some sort of significance. And that's why variable names exist. So if the number had a significance of maybe age, or someone's address, or the amount of cars somebody owns, that's what we can say. We could say variable name could be age, number of cars, address. But in this case, we have two values that don't really mean anything. But other than that, they're 3 and 9. So we'll give the variable names 3 and 9. And you'll see at the bottom left here, we have a specific way of laying these out. So the first thing on the left is the data type, or the variable. And don't worry too much about what those are, or how many of them are. We'll get to those later. But just remember, for 3 and 9, for those, they're integers, so we use the data type int. Next up after that, we had the variable name, and we've used 3 and 9 respectively for them. Then we have the equals sign, and the equals sign does not mean equal to, it means set it to this. So all we're saying is the variable name 3 is going to be set to the value 3. And of course, at the very end, we want to add the semicolon in, which is basically the period of programming. It's just, it's ending the statement at the semicolon. So now that we have our two variables, 3 and 9, we want to print those to the screen. We want to do some stuff. So we're going to introduce something called a method, and this method's known as system.out.println. And you see the parentheses there. It's a great method for putting stuff on the screen, and you'll see in the example there, we have system.out.println, and then in the parentheses, we have quotation marks, hello world, and that will print hello world to the screen. So it's very powerful, and it's great because it quickly puts things to the screen, so we don't have to worry about writing something to do that. So we have hello world. Now, for our program purposes, we will talk about the stuff on the bottom left there. So we've gone over 3 and 9, and now we have a new variable called add up, which is also an integer, which adds up our variables 3 and 9. And you'll see I use the variable names to add those up, and there's a little plus sign there, and Java will read that as a plus sign. Java can read basic functions like minus, times, plus, divide, and also mod, which is something we can get into later. So 3 plus 9. And then we're going to say system.out.println. A cool part of the system.out.println method is that we can add things together. So we'll take the variable name 3, and then we'll put a plus sign, and then in quotations plus, then another plus sign, 9, plus equals, plus add up. And on the screen, it will look like that on the right. 3 plus 9 equals 12. So those plus signs will string everything together in that specific print line and give a nice format on the right there. So it looks very nice, and that way we don't have to worry about, again, trying to write our own method to do that. So very cool and very powerful there. And then finally we have one more system.out.println line that says this is awesome, and a shout out to mom, of course. So now it's your turn. So the next thing that we'll have you do is just write a simple program, and it should be very easy, very similar to what we did above. And that's to write a program that adds up 33 and 27. And then take that value that adds up 23 and 27 and put it into a variable called age. Then print that to the screen. So my age currently is, and then that variable age. And then print after that, I'm not a young man anymore. So you'll want to use 3 variables total, 2 for the numbers 33 and 27, and then 1 for the sum of them, just as we did above, where we had 2 integers and then we added them up and put them in another variable. So you'll want to use, as you heard, they're integers, so I'm thinking for the data type, you're going to want to use int. And of course we haven't talked about any others, so you probably should use that one. Then finally, use system.out.println to print those to the screen. And you can refer back to the previous slides for the examples if you get confused. But it shouldn't be too hard to do this, and we'll go over in the next video the solution to this. So finally, some review. So when Java is compiling a file, it turns it into a .what file so the computer can read it. Hopefully you should know the answer to that one, and if you don't, go back and to the video and see what the answer is. Then where are values stored? So where is the data stored for each of these values? 3, 9. What is the name of that thing? Then can you change the memory location address? So that number 2048 or 2052, does that change at all? Or is it the variable? And then finally, what does system.out.println do? Or what's the purpose of that method? Hopefully you should be able to answer all these after watching the video, and if you can't, be sure to go back and review those and make sure that you have a strong understanding, and then we'll continue off of these ideas in the next videos. And if you have any questions, of course, you can feel free to post a comment, and I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.